The day of the royal trial had finally come. From every corner of the kingdom, people gathered to witness strength, skill, and courage. The arena was no longer just a place of training. It had become a place where names would either rise or be forgotten. Above them all, the king stood with the weight of the kingdom on his shoulders. His eyes moved across the crowd, then toward the princes. Today was not only a test of power, it was a test of who was worthy to stand before the people. The princes entered with pride written across their faces. One smiled like victory already belonged to him. The other tried to hide his fear behind confidence. But both of them knew one thing. Jumong was no longer the weak boy they once mocked. The first prince stepped forward first. His blade moved quickly, striking with confidence and pride. In only a few moments, his opponent was forced back, then defeated. The crowd cheered, and the prince smiled, as if reminding everyone who he believed should rule. Then Jumong entered the arena. The crowd grew quiet, watching carefully. His opponent attacked with force, expecting him to panic, but Jumong did not rush. He breathed, waited, and allowed the fight to come to him. Then, in one clean movement, everything changed. Jumong turned the attack against his opponent and sent him crashing to the ground. For a moment, the entire arena went silent. No one laughed. No one mocked him. They had all seen it. Next came the trial of archery. Far across the arena, the targets stood waiting. This was not a test of strength alone. It was a test of calm hands, steady breath, and a mind that could not be shaken. The princes took their shots with confidence. One arrow after another flew through the air and struck with precision. The crowd roared again. To many, the result already seemed clear, but the final arrow had not yet been fired. Jumong stepped forward and raised his bow. The noise around him began to fade. He closed his eyes, not of fear, but focus. In that silence, he listened to the wind, felt the weight of the bow, and trusted the instinct growing inside him. The arrow left his hand like it had already chosen its path. It crossed the arena and struck the center of the target. Perfect. The crowd gasped, and even those who doubted him could no longer look away. But the trial was not over. The targets began to move, swinging fast across the field. This was where ordinary skill failed. A warrior could not simply aim. He had to understand movement before it happened. Jumong drew again. One breath, one focus, one release after another. His arrows flew like they were guided by the wind itself, striking every moving target before the crowd could even react. Then the arena changed. A heavy cage was brought forward, and a deep growl rolled through the air. When the gate opened, fear spread through the crowd. This was no longer a game. This was the trial of blood. The beast stepped forward, wild and furious. For the first time, pride left the faces of the princes. They had fought men, they had held bows, but this was different. This was fear standing before them. Then Jumong moved, calmly, slowly, without waiting for praise or permission. While others stepped back, he stepped forward, and in that moment, the crowd saw courage before they saw victory. The beast charged with terrifying force. Dust rose beneath its feet as it rushed towards him. Jumong moved at the last second, dodging with instinct and striking with control. Each movement was dangerous. One mistake, and the trial would become his grave. But Jumong did not fall. He waited for the perfect moment, then moved with everything he had learned. The final strike landed with force. The beast crashed down, and the arena froze in disbelief. Then silence broke into thunder. The crowd erupted, shouting his name with shock and excitement. The boy they once called weak had stood before death and walked away alive. The king rose slowly from his seat. For a moment he said nothing. His eyes rested on Jumong with pride, fear, and something deeper, because he knew what the people were beginning to see was only the beginning. But not everyone celebrated. The first prince burned with anger, his pride wounded before the entire kingdom. The second prince stood shaken, unable to deny what he had witnessed. Jumong had not only survived the trial, he had changed the balance of power. Far from the noise of the arena, hidden eyes watched from the distance. The Damul warriors had waited for proof, and now they had seen it. The bloodline had awakened before the world. That night, Jumong stood alone beneath the moon. The cheers were gone, the crowd had disappeared, but something remained inside him, a quiet strength he could no longer ignore. Then a royal guard approached him and knelt before him. His voice was calm, but the message carried weight. The king had summoned him, not as a weak prince, not as a forgotten boy, but as someone whose truth could no longer be hidden. The palace doors opened slowly before him. Beyond them waited answers and secrets that had been buried for years. Jumong stepped forward, not knowing the life he understood was about to end. The trial had given him victory, but the truth waiting behind those doors would change everything.